"You're an unfit father who prioritizes work over family," she stated coldly during the preliminary custody hearing. The words hit like a physical blow. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." My name is Nathan Miller. For 12 years, I had built a life with Rebecca in our Portland home, raising our 2 children, Emma and Liam, while balancing my career as an architectural engineer. I never imagined that what began as growing apart would transform into a vicious custody battle where my character, my parenting, and my very presence in my children's lives would be systematically attacked. The judge's sympathetic glance toward Rebecca as she dabbed at non-existent tears told me everything I needed to know. I was facing an uphill battle that traditional legal approaches might not win. My world had revolved around our family despite the demanding nature of my work. I coached Liam's soccer team every Saturday morning, regardless of project deadlines. I never missed Emma's dance recitals, sitting in the front row with flowers ready. I helped with homework, attended parent-teacher conferences, and was the designated monster checker at bedtime. None of that seemed to matter now as Rebecca painted me as an absentee father who couldn't possibly handle primary custody. The temporary custody arrangement granted me weekend visitation, while the court sorted through the competing claims, 2 days out of 14 with my own children. The first weekend they came to my newly rented townhouse, Emma, 9, asked if I had abandoned them. Liam, 7, wouldn't make eye contact. Whatever narrative Rebecca had crafted was already taking root in their impressionable minds. After they left, I sat alone in the quiet emptiness of my temporary home, staring at the refrigerator covered with their artwork from happier times. The legal advice I'd received echoed in my head: be patient, the system favors the status quo. But patience wouldn't stop my children from being poisoned against me. Patience wouldn't preserve the bonds I'd spent years building. Something had to change. I called my attorney, Patricia Winters, the following morning. "I need more than standard procedure here," I told her. "Rebecca is manipulating the narrative and the children. By the time we get to a final hearing, irreparable damage will be done." "The courts move at their own pace, Nathan," Patricia replied, her voice carrying the weariness of someone who had delivered this news countless times. "Without evidence of endangerment, we can't expedite the process." "Then we need to gather evidence," I said, "not of endangerment, but of manipulation, of parental alienation, of whatever's really happening when I'm not there." There was a long pause on the line. "You're talking about private investigation," Patricia finally said. Not a question, but a statement. "It's expensive and often yields little of legal value." "But sometimes it does," I pushed. "And right now, the narrative is completely in Rebecca's control. I need to understand what I'm really up against." Patricia sighed. "I know someone. Discreet, ethical, experienced with family court cases. But Nathan, you need to be prepared for what you might learn, and for the possibility it won't help your case." I agreed immediately. The not knowing was worse than whatever truth awaited. Michael Reeves had the weathered look of someone who had seen the darker side of human nature, but hadn't been corrupted by it. His office was Spartan, but professional, with nothing to indicate the sensitive nature of his work, except for the exceptional soundproofing I noticed when the door closed behind us. "Mr. Miller," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk, "Ms. Winters briefed me on your situation. Before we discuss specifics, I need to be clear about my approach and ethics. I don't manufacture evidence. I don't harass subjects. I observe, document, and report facts. If those facts don't help your case, I still report them. Are we clear?" I nodded, oddly reassured by his directness. That's exactly what I want. The truth, whatever it is. Michael leaned back slightly. "Tell me what you know about your ex-wife's routine, habits, and any concerns you have." The more information I have, the more efficiently I can work. For the next hour, I shared everything I could think of. Rebecca's new job at a marketing firm that allegedly offered flexible hours, yet somehow made her too busy for school pickups she'd always managed during our marriage. The mysterious work friend, Jason, who seemed to be increasingly present according to my children's casual comments. The subtle changes in Emma and Liam's behavior after their time with her. The inconsistencies in Rebecca's statements to the court versus what I knew of our family life. Michael took notes, asking occasional clarifying questions, his expression revealing nothing. When I finished, he reviewed his notes briefly before meeting my eyes. Here's what I can do. 2 weeks of observation focusing on child exchanges, parenting time usage, and documentation of any concerning patterns. If warranted, we can extend from there. My reports are detailed, factual, and admissible when properly introduced. The retainer is $5,000. The amount would strain my already stretched finances, but I wrote the check without hesitation. My relationship with my children was priceless. Michael explained his reporting procedure and assured me of complete confidentiality. As I stood to leave, he offered one final piece of advice. Continue being the best father you can during your parenting time. Don't interrogate your children about their mother. Don't give anyone reason to question your motives. The evidence, whatever it may be, will speak for itself. I followed his advice, though it wasn't easy. Each time I returned my children to Rebecca's new luxury apartment, somehow affordable on her salary alone, I wondered what was happening behind those walls. When Liam mentioned Mom's special friend during a Saturday breakfast, I maintained an interested but neutral expression while my stomach churned. When Emma asked if I would be sad if they lived with Mom all the time, I reassured her of my unconditional love without pressing for details about where such a question originated. 2 weeks passed with no word from Michael. I began to wonder if the entire endeavor had been a waste of resources I couldn't afford to squander. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Then, as I was reviewing blueprints for a new project, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "We should meet," Michael said without introduction. "Tomorrow morning, my office, 8 sharp." The night passed with agonizing slowness. I arrived at Michael's office 15 minutes early, having barely slept. He welcomed me with the same professional demeanor as before, but I detected something different in his expression, a grim determination that both concerned and encouraged me. "Mr. Miller," he began, placing a thick folder on the desk between us. "I've completed the initial investigation and prepared a comprehensive report. Before we proceed, I want to confirm again that you're seeking factual information regardless of how it might affect your case." "Yes," I said, my mouth suddenly dry. "Just tell me what you found." Michael opened the folder. "I'll summarize first, then we can review the documentation. Your ex-wife has engaged in a systematic campaign of parental alienation. She consistently speaks negatively about you to the children, often immediately before and after your parenting time. She has a significant relationship with Jason Markham, her supervisor at work, that predates your separation by approximately 7 months, based on electronic communications we were able to legally access." My hands gripped the armrests of my chair. An affair. I had suspected something, but the confirmation still landed like a physical blow. Michael continued methodically. "Mr. Markham stays overnight at her residence regularly, including during her parenting time. More concerning from a legal perspective, she frequently leaves the children in the care of various third parties while claiming work obligations. Obligations that our surveillance proves included extended lunches, spa appointments, and overnight trips with Mr. Markham. We documented 14 instances in the past 2 weeks where she misrepresented her whereabouts to both you and, based on recorded conversations, to the guardian ad litem assigned to your case. He pulled out a series of photographs, time-stamped and annotated. Rebecca entering hotel rooms with Jason during times she had claimed to be working late. Rebecca dropping the children at her mother's house for overnight stays that conflicted with her court testimony about maintaining their routine. Most disturbingly, screenshots of text messages between Rebecca and a friend discussing strategies to make Nathan look unstable and limit his access until he gives up. "How did you get these?" I asked, pointing to the messages. "Legally," Michael assured me. Her friend Caroline was concerned about the manipulation and provided them voluntarily. She's prepared to testify if needed. For 2 hours, we reviewed the evidence, a damning collection that painted a picture of deception far beyond what I had imagined. When we finished, I sat back, emotionally drained, but strangely calm. "What now?" I asked. "That depends on your goals," Michael replied. "This evidence could be used aggressively to pursue primary custody. It could also be used as leverage for a more equitable arrangement without a protracted court battle." I considered this carefully. Despite everything, Rebecca was still my children's mother. A scorched-earth approach might win me custody, but at what cost to Emma and Liam? "I need to think," I said finally, "and consult with my attorney." Michael nodded. "Of course. I'll prepare copies of everything for Ms. Winters. And Mr. Miller," he hesitated, breaking his professional demeanor slightly. "For what it's worth, the way you're approaching this speaks volumes about your character as a father." Patricia's reaction to the evidence was a mixture of shock and strategic calculation. "This changes everything," she said, after reviewing the materials in her office the following day. "Parental alienation, misrepresentation to the court, neglecting the children during her parenting time. The judge will take this very seriously." "What's our best move?" I asked. She tapped her pen thoughtfully against the desk. "We have options. We could file for an emergency modification of custody based on this evidence. That would be the aggressive approach. Or we could request a settlement conference and present this privately to Rebecca and her attorney first. What would you recommend?" Legally speaking, the aggressive approach might yield faster results, but in family law, especially with young children involved, scorched earth rarely leads to lasting peace. A settlement conference puts the ball in her court, while making it clear we have the ammunition to change the game entirely. The decision weighed heavily. Every instinct wanted to rush into court immediately, evidence in hand, to reclaim my rightful place in my children's lives. But Patricia's measured advice resonated with the father I wanted to be. Someone who could navigate conflict with wisdom rather than just reactive emotion. "Let's try the settlement approach first," I decided, "but with a clear timeline. If she doesn't engage reasonably, we move forward with court action." Patricia nodded approvingly. "I'll contact her attorney today to schedule a settlement conference. In the meantime, continue documenting everything during your parenting time. The more consistent your positive involvement, the stronger our position." Rebecca's attorney requested the nature of the settlement discussion before agreeing to a meeting. Patricia provided just enough information, newly discovered evidence regarding parenting time and representations to the court, to convey seriousness without revealing our full hand. A conference was scheduled for the following week. The settlement meeting took place in a conference room at Patricia's law firm. Rebecca arrived with her attorney, David Cohen, a family law specialist known for aggressive tactics. Her confident smirk as she entered suggested she believed this was some desperate ploy on my part. That confidence evaporated when Patricia methodically presented the evidence Michael had gathered. With each photograph, text message, and documented Instance of neglect during her parenting time, Rebecca's expression shifted from dismissive to concerned to something approaching panic. By the time Patricia presented Caroline's sworn statement about the deliberate campaign to alienate me from the children, Rebecca was visibly shaken. "This is an invasion of privacy," David finally sputtered, his usual eloquence abandoned. The court will absolutely consider evidence of parental alienation and misrepresentation," Patricia interrupted calmly. "Everything presented here was obtained legally and is admissible. We haven't even addressed Ms. Miller's relationship with her supervisor that preceded the separation, though that certainly provides context for her motivations." Rebecca's face flushed. "You had me followed. Had someone spy on me?" She directed her fury at me. "How dare you?" I maintained steady eye contact. "How dare I seek the truth about my children's well-being? How dare I defend my relationship with them when you've been actively working to destroy it? Those are questions you should be asking yourself, Rebecca." David placed a restraining hand on Rebecca's arm and requested a brief recess. When they returned 20 minutes later, the tone had shifted dramatically. "My client is willing to discuss a more equitable parenting arrangement," David began, his earlier bravado replaced with a conciliatory tone. "Perhaps a week-on, week-off schedule that would provide stability for the children while recognizing both parents' importance." Patricia glanced at me. We had discussed this possibility, and while it wasn't the primary custody I believed would best serve the children, given what we now knew, it was a significant improvement from the current arrangement. "We're open to discussing that framework," Patricia replied, "with several non-negotiable conditions." Over the next 3 hours, we hammered out a detailed agreement: equal parenting time, joint decision-making on education, healthcare, and other major issues, a non-disparagement clause with enforcement mechanisms, requirements for notification about significant others spending time with the children, and provisions for mediation before any future court filings. Rebecca avoided my eyes throughout most of the negotiation, speaking primarily through her attorney. As we neared completion, however, she suddenly addressed me directly. "I never thought you'd go this far," she said, her tone a mixture of anger and something like respect. "I never thought I'd have to," I replied simply. "They're my children too, Rebecca. I would move mountains for them." Something shifted in her expression, a reluctant acknowledgement perhaps that her perception of me as the disinterested father had been a convenient fiction rather than reality. The agreement was finalized and submitted to the court for approval. The judge, upon reviewing the detailed settlement and the summary of evidence that had led to it, commended both parties for reaching resolution without a trial. The new arrangement would begin the following weekend. That Friday night, when Emma and Liam arrived for what would now be a full week rather than just 2 days, there was a subtle but noticeable difference in their demeanor. Emma hugged me tightly, without the hesitation that had characterized recent visits. Liam actually smiled when showing me his new action figure, small changes but meaningful ones. As we ate dinner together, Emma asked the question that revealed how much work still lay ahead. "Dad, are you and Mom going to be fighting forever?" I put down my fork and chose my words carefully. "Your mum and I have found a better way to be your parents, even though we're not married anymore. There will still be disagreements sometimes, but we're not fighting about who gets to be with you anymore. You get to have both of us in your lives, equally." "Mum said you didn't want us as much before," Liam said quietly, staring at his plate. The comment stung, but I maintained my composure. "That was never true, buddy. I've always wanted to be with you both as much as possible. Sometimes grown-ups say things when they're upset that aren't accurate. What matters is that now we have this new arrangement where I get to be with you much more, and I couldn't be happier about that." The transition wasn't seamless. There were difficult moments when the children repeated things Rebecca had told them, occasions when exchanges were tense and adjustments as we all adapted to the new schedule. But week by week, our relationship strengthened. The parental alienation tactics ceased, largely because Rebecca knew we were now operating under scrutiny with serious consequences for violations. 3 months into the new arrangement, I received an unexpected text from Rebecca. "Can we meet? Just us, no attorneys. Coffee at Riverside Park Saturday while kids at soccer practice." I approached the meeting with caution, but also hoped that we might establish a more cooperative, co-parenting relationship. Rebecca was already seated at an outdoor table when I arrived, 2 coffees waiting. She looked different somehow. Less polished, more authentic than the carefully constructed image she'd maintained during our legal battles. "Thank you for coming," she began, surprising me with her subdued tone. "I've been doing some thinking and some therapy, actually, and I owe you an apology." I remained silent, giving her space to continue. What I did, the alienation, the lies involving Jason before we were even separated, it was wrong. I was so angry about how our marriage ended, so convinced I deserved more, that I lost sight of what was best for Emma and Liam. She paused, collecting herself. "Watching how you've handled everything these past months, never bad-mouthing me to them despite having every reason to. It's made me reconsider a lot of things." "I appreciate that, Rebecca," I said carefully. "The kids need both of us. They thrive when we're not at war." She nodded. "Jason and I broke up. He wasn't who I thought he was, especially around the kids. And seeing your relationship with them, how they light up talking about their time. With you, it's been a wake-up call." We talked for nearly an hour, the most honest conversation we'd had in years. No legal posturing, no strategic agenda, just 2 parents acknowledging failures and committing to do better for the sake of 2 children we both loved. As our meeting concluded, Rebecca said something that marked how far we'd come. "You know, hiring that investigator was the best thing you could have done. Not just for you, but for me too. It forced me to face what I was becoming." I thought of Michael Reeves and his methodical documentation of the truth. "Sometimes we need an objective mirror," I replied. Today, a year after that fateful preliminary hearing where Rebecca called me an unfit father, we have settled into a functional co-parenting relationship. Not perfect, but characterized by mutual respect rather than hostility. Emma and Liam move between our homes with security and confidence, no longer caught in the crossfire of adult conflict. They're thriving academically and socially. The emotional, withdrawn behaviors they'd begun to exhibit now, just a painful memory. The evidence my private investigator gathered didn't just change the legal outcome of our custody battle, it changed the trajectory of our family's future by forcing truth into a situation clouded by emotion and manipulation. Sometimes, fighting for your children means having the courage to uncover difficult truths, not for vengeance, but to clear a path toward healing. When people ask how I managed to achieve an outcome that defied the typical bias many fathers face in family court, I tell them it wasn't about winning a battle, but about standing firmly for what was right. My children's need for both parents, and my right to remain central in their lives. The evidence simply made visible what had always been true, that being a father wasn't just a legal designation to me, but the cornerstone of my identity and purpose. In the end, this journey wasn't about exposing Rebecca's deception for its own sake. It was about creating the space for something better to emerge from the ashes of our broken marriage, a new family structure where my children could truly flourish, with both parents fully present in their lives. The initial victory in court was just the beginning of a longer journey. While the new custody arrangement gave me equal time with Emma and Liam, rebuilding what had been damaged would take more than a legal document. The first month of our week-on, week-off schedule revealed challenges I hadn't anticipated. Emma, normally talkative and affectionate, would arrive at my townhouse withdrawn and distant, taking 2 to 3 days to settle in before glimpses of her former self would emerge. Liam developed stomach aches on exchange days, his small body physically manifesting the stress of constantly shifting between homes. I documented everything, not for future court battles, but to identify patterns I could address. Patricia had warned me that transition difficulties were normal, but my engineering mind refused to accept normal as an excuse for my children's suffering. There had to be actionable solutions. I consulted with Dr. Melissa Brandt, a child psychologist, specializing in divorce adjustment, showing her my notes without editorial commentary. "What you're describing is textbook transition stress," she confirmed after reviewing the patterns. "But I'm more concerned about what happens just before they return to your care. These behavior shifts suggest they're receiving conflicting messages about their relationship with you." "Rebecca signed a non-disparagement agreement as part of our settlement," I said, frustration evident in my voice. "Are you suggesting she's still attempting to alienate them?" Dr. Brandt chose her words carefully. "Non-disparagement can be circumvented in subtle ways. Direct criticism becomes concerned questions. 'Did Dad remember to check your homework?' implies forgetfulness without stating it. 'I miss you so much when you're gone' seems innocent, but can create guilt about enjoying time with the other parent." Her insights resonated with comments my children had made. Liam asking if I knew how to check for monsters under the bed the right way, like Mom does. Emma wondering if I was lonely when they weren't there, a question that seemed to carry the weight of responsibility no 9-year-old should bear. "What can I do?" I asked. "I won't drag them back into court over subtle manipulation." "Create consistency between houses," she advised. "Same bedtime routines, similar rules, predictable transitions, and most importantly, never make them messengers or interrogate them about their mother. The more seamless their movement between homes, the less opportunity for comparison or loyalty conflicts." I took her advice to heart, creating a co-parenting journal that traveled with the children. Basic information, sleep patterns, homework completion, upcoming school events, communicated without editorial comment. I invited Rebecca to parent-teacher conferences with explicit acknowledgement of our shared interest in the children's education. When Emma mentioned Rebecca was struggling with her science project, I sent over resources that had helped during my parenting time. Small, consistent actions that prioritized the children's well-being over the lingering resentment I still felt. It wasn't an overnight transformation. Rebecca initially viewed my attempts at cooperative co-parenting with suspicion, responding minimally to the journal and scheduling her own separate teacher meetings. But 3 months into our new arrangement, something shifted during a school emergency. Liam fell from the playground equipment during recess, breaking his arm badly enough to require surgery. The school called both of us, and we arrived at the emergency room simultaneously. The tension was immediate. 2 parents who had been adversaries now forced to make urgent medical decisions together. The nurse, sensing the dynamic, started to ask which parent would be accompanying Liam into treatment. Before she finished the question, I spoke. "We're both going. He needs both his parents right now." I looked directly at Rebecca, setting aside every bitter argument and manipulative tactic that had characterized our recent history. "Right?" Something flickered in her expression, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "Right," she agreed. "We're both staying." Throughout that long afternoon and evening, we functioned as a united front for Liam's benefit, consulting on pain management options, taking turns comforting him, even sharing a quiet dinner from the hospital cafeteria while he slept after surgery. When Rebecca stepped out to call her mother for an update, she did something unexpected. Upon returning, "I got you coffee," she said, handing me a cup. You still take it black, right? It was a small gesture, almost insignificant compared to the legal battles we'd waged. But in that moment, it represented something profound, recognition of our shared history and our current shared purpose, despite everything between us that had broken. Liam's recovery required coordination between our households, adjustments to routines, and consistent follow-up care. The crisis created a framework for communication that bypassed our personal conflicts. The co-parenting journal evolved from basic information to thoughtful exchanges. Liam was worried about falling behind in math. I worked with him on fractions for an extra 30 minutes tonight. Or, Emma seems anxious about the school play auditions. Maybe you could help her practice her lines this weekend. 6 months after the custody agreement, I received a text from Rebecca that would have been unimaginable during our legal battles. Parents' night at school tomorrow. Thought we could attend together so Emma and Liam don't have to choose or feel awkward explaining why we're separate. Let me know. We sat together at Emma's classroom presentation, maintaining appropriate distance but presenting a united front that visibly relieved our daughter. The tension of performing for one parent, while worrying about excluding the other, lifted from her small shoulders. She beamed when introducing us to her teacher as my mom and dad, not as separate competing entities, but as a parental unit that remained intact despite our marital dissolution. Walking to the parking lot afterward, Rebecca brought up something unexpected. I've been meaning to tell you that I'm impressed with how you've handled all this, especially after what I put you through with the custody fight. The acknowledgement caught me off guard. I'm just trying to do what's best for them, I replied. I know. That's my point. She hesitated. I wasn't always thinking about that. I was angry and wanted to hurt you. The kids were. And collateral damage in my mind. I'm not proud of it. It was the most direct admission she'd made about her earlier tactics. I chose my response carefully, aware that this moment could either build a bridge or reinforce walls. We both made mistakes, I said, though my mistakes had never included attempting to sever her relationship with our children. What matters is that we're doing better now. She nodded, seeming to appreciate that I hadn't used her vulnerability as an opportunity to emphasize her greater culpability. Jason is completely out of the picture, by the way. That relationship was a mistake from the beginning. I hadn't asked about her romantic life since our settlement, maintaining the strict boundaries of our co-parenting relationship. Her volunteering this information signaled a desire for a more authentic connection. I'm sorry it didn't work. Out, I offered, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. Her happiness, while no longer my responsibility, would inevitably affect our children's well-being. Don't be. It was never real. She glanced at me, unlike what we had, at least, at the beginning. The conversation was veering into territory I wasn't prepared to navigate. Acknowledging our shared history was one thing, revisiting it emotionally was another entirely. I steered us back to safer ground. Emma's teacher mentioned the science. Fair next month? We should coordinate on that project. Last year it became a major source of stress. Rebecca accepted the redirection gracefully. Good idea. Maybe we could meet with her together to discuss parameters so we're on the same page. This new phase of cooperative co-parenting didn't mean the past was erased. There were still difficult moments, disagreements about discipline approaches, occasional missed communications, the inevitable complications when two separate households attempt to function in concert. But the fundamental adversarial nature of our relationship had transformed into something resembling a functional partnership. The most profound changes appeared in Emma and Liam. The transition difficulties gradually diminished. Stomach aches disappeared. Academic performance improved. Their ability to speak openly about both households without anxiety or perceived loyalty conflicts developed as they realized that communication between their parents wouldn't trigger conflict. 9 months after our custody agreement, I faced an unexpected professional opportunity, leading a major, sustainable housing development that would significantly advance my career but require extensive travel during the initial 3-month planning phase. Under our custody agreement, I was entitled to my parenting time, regardless of work demands, with provisions for right of first refusal if either parent needed childcare during their designated time. The old Rebecca would have seized on this development as evidence supporting her original claims about my prioritization of work over family. She might have documented every instance I needed coverage, building a case for modifying our custody arrangement. The evolved Rebecca responded differently when I called to discuss the situation. "Congratulations on the project," she said sincerely. "That's a big opportunity for you. Thank you. The timing is challenging with our current schedule. I'd be traveling Tuesday through Thursday for the next 12 weeks, which impacts my parenting time significantly." "What are you thinking in terms of arrangements?" she asked, her tone collaborative rather than combative. "I'd like to propose a temporary modification. You take primary custody during the project phase, with me having extended weekends, Friday through Monday. Once the travel portion ends, we return to our regular schedule. I'd also want to FaceTime with the kids every evening I'm away." The silence that followed made me nervous. I had essentially offered her exactly what she'd initially demanded in court: primary custody, with me having weekend visitation. The difference was that this arrangement would be temporary and cooperative rather than imposed and permanent. "That seems reasonable," she finally said. "But I want to be clear that this is temporary. You've been really good with them, Nathan. More engaged than I expected, honestly. They need that consistency with you." The admission stunned me into momentary silence. "Thank you for saying that. It's just the truth. And if this project is important to you, we should make it work. The kids will understand if we explain it properly. We can tell them together." We did exactly that, sitting Emma and Liam down for a family meeting where we jointly explained the temporary schedule change. Their questions were thoughtful rather than anxious, focused on practical matters rather than emotional security. The foundation we'd built over the previous months had created a sense of stability that could withstand temporary disruption. The project launched successfully, with me returning to Indianapolis exhausted each Thursday night, but present and engaged for extended weekends with my children. Rebecca maintained our communication journal, ensuring I remained updated on school developments, social activities, and emotional states. She facilitated daily video calls without complaint, even rearranging evening activities to accommodate my schedule when necessary. One Tuesday evening, during my 3rd week of travel, Emma was unusually quiet during our video call. When I asked what was happening, she hesitated before responding. "Mum's got a date tomorrow," she finally said, watching my reaction carefully. I maintained a neutral expression while processing this information. Rebecca dating again was inevitable and completely within her rights. My concern was solely for how it might affect the children. "How do you feel about that?" I asked Emma. She shrugged. "It's weird, but Mom said it's just dinner with someone from her work, not a big deal." "Your mom deserves to have adult friends and go out sometimes," I said carefully, "just like sometimes I get dinner with colleagues." "Are you dating anyone?" she asked directly. The question caught me off guard. My focus had been so completely on rebuilding stability for the children and establishing a workable co-parenting relationship that dating hadn't entered my consciousness. "Not right now. I've been pretty busy with work and spending time with you and Liam, but someday I might, and that would be okay too." Emma seemed satisfied with this answer. Later that night, I received an unexpected text from Rebecca. "Thank you for handling the date conversation well with Emma. Was planning to tell you myself, but she beat me to it. Nothing serious, just dinner with someone from marketing. Wanted you to know I won't introduce anyone to the kids unless it becomes significant, and would discuss with you first." Her transparency and consideration regarding this delicate aspect of post-divorce parenting further demonstrated how far we'd come. I replied with equal respect, "I appreciate the heads up. Same commitment from my end. No introductions without discussion first." As the project's travel demands continued, an unanticipated development emerged. Rather than growing distant during this modified schedule, my relationship with Emma and Liam actually deepened. Our time together became more deliberately engaged, with weekend activities planned thoughtfully rather than haphazardly. The daily video calls established a consistent connection that transcended physical presence. And most surprisingly, the cooperation with Rebecca created a more relaxed atmosphere that benefited everyone. When the 3-month project phase concluded, we faced a decision point. Return to our strictly divided week-on, week-off schedule, or consider modifications that might better serve our evolved family dynamic. Rebecca invited me for coffee to discuss options before presenting anything to the children. "The current arrangement is working better than I expected," she admitted, stirring her latte absently. "The kids seem more settled with the longer stretches at my place, but the consistent long weekends with you, the transitions are smoother." "I've noticed that too," I agreed, "but I miss the full weeks with them." She nodded. "What if we tried something different? Maybe I have the Monday through Thursday, you have Friday through Sunday, and then we alternate the 4th weekend for a longer stretch. That way they have consistency during the school week, but still get substantial time with both of us." The proposal surprised me. It would technically give Rebecca more overall time than our court-ordered arrangement, while providing me with regular 3-day weekends plus extended 4-day weekends twice a month. From a pure quantity perspective, it reduced my parenting time, but from a quality perspective, it might offer advantages. "Let me think about it," I said. "It's a significant change from what the court established." "Of course, it's just an idea." She hesitated. "For what it's worth, I'm not suggesting this to get more time or control. The last few months have shown me you're a good father, Nathan. Better than I gave you credit for during our marriage, honestly. This is about what seems to be working for the kids." Her acknowledgement of my parenting capabilities, something she had actively undermined during our custody battle, represented a profound shift. The evidence Michael Reeves had gathered had forced a reckoning, but Rebecca's evolution since then had been her own journey. After careful consideration and consultation with Patricia, I agreed to a 3-month trial of the new arrangement, documented through a mutually signed modification that wouldn't require court involvement unless we chose to make it permanent. The children adjusted quickly, appreciating the predictability of weekday routines, while enthusiastically anticipating their time with me. Unexpectedly, this arrangement also provided space for personal development I had neglected. With regular, child-free weeknights, I joined an architectural innovation group, developing cutting-edge sustainable housing designs. I established a consistent exercise routine that improved both my physical health and mental clarity. And eventually, I began cautiously dating again. Nothing serious, but steps toward reclaiming aspects of adult life that had been subsumed by the custody battle. Rebecca similarly used her child-free weekends constructively, taking courses toward an MBA and rebuilding friendships that had atrophied during our marriage dissolution. Our separate personal growth paradoxically strengthened our co-parenting relationship as we each became more fulfilled individuals rather than defining ourselves solely through parental identity or post-divorce animosity. 1 year after the settlement conference, where Michael's evidence had changed everything, Rebecca suggested another meeting. Not with attorneys, not about schedules or logistics, but simply to reflect on our journey. "I owe you an apology," she said directly, once we were seated at a quiet table in a local cafe. A real one, not just acknowledgement of mistakes, but a genuine apology for what I tried to do. I waited, allowing her the space to continue. I convinced myself you were a lesser parent to justify taking the kids away from you. I manipulated them, lied to the court, and would have destroyed their relationship with you if that investigator hadn't exposed what I was doing. She met my eyes steadily. It was wrong, all of it, and I'm deeply sorry. The apology I had once desperately wanted now arrived when I no longer needed it for validation. The evidence had already vindicated me. Our evolving co-parenting relationship had already demonstrated Rebecca's recognition of my importance in our children's lives. Yet hearing the explicit acknowledgement still provided a form of closure. "I accept your apology," I said simply. "We can't change what happened, but we've built something better from it. That's what matters now." "Do you think we could ever truly be friends?" she asked. "Not just cooperative co-parents, but actually friends?" The question required careful consideration. "I think we're developing a friendship of sorts already, one built around our shared commitment to Emma and Liam. It's different from other friendships, shaped by our history and responsibilities, but it has value." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's a fair assessment, and probably healthier than trying to force something more conventional." As our conversation continued, touching on the children's development, our respective career paths, and the modified custody arrangement that was working, surprisingly, well, I reflected on the extraordinary journey from adversaries to allies. The private investigator's evidence had been the catalyst, forcing truth into a situation clouded by emotion and manipulation. But the transformation that followed had required ongoing commitment from both of us, small daily choices to prioritize cooperation over conflict. Emma and Liam continued to flourish under our revised arrangement. Emma's teacher commented on her increased confidence and academic engagement. Liam's pediatrician noted that his stress-related symptoms had completely resolved. Both children spoke openly about their two homes without the tension that had previously accompanied such discussions. The modified schedule became our permanent arrangement through a formalized court agreement 6 months later. The judge, who had witnessed our bitter initial custody dispute, remarked on the unusual nature of our case. Not the allegations or evidence, which were unfortunately common, but the constructive resolution and ongoing cooperation that followed. Most cases that begin with such significant conflict don't evolve into functional co-parenting, she observed during our brief hearing. Whatever process brought you to this point deserves recognition. Rebecca and I exchanged a glance, both recognizing the complicated truth behind the judge's observation. The process had begun with surveillance and exposed deception, continued through negotiation born of leverage rather than goodwill, and only gradually evolved into genuine cooperation. It wasn't a journey either of us would have chosen, but the destination had ultimately served our children's well-being. 2 years after our divorce finalized, we navigated another significant transition. Rebecca received a job offer in Chicago. Close enough for regular visitation, but too far for our current arrangement to remain viable. Rather than approaching this development as adversaries, we worked collaboratively on solutions, researching school districts together, discussing potential parenting schedules, and most importantly, involving Emma and Liam in age-appropriate ways in the decision-making process. The situation required flexibility from everyone. I agreed to modify our custody arrangement to give Rebecca primary physical custody during the school year, with me having extended weekends, school holidays, and the majority of summer break. In return, Rebecca committed to facilitating regular video calls and involving me in all significant decisions regarding education, healthcare, and extracurricular activities. The most meaningful aspect of this negotiation was what didn't happen. No attorneys were involved, no threats of court. Action materialized. No attempts to manipulate the children or system occurred. We had developed the capacity to prioritize our children's needs above personal convenience or lingering resentments, a capacity that would serve Emma and Liam well as they navigated the inevitable challenges of growing up between two households. On the day Rebecca and the children left for Chicago, we shared a family breakfast at a restaurant midway between our homes. Emma, now 11, articulated what all of us were feeling. "It's weird," she said, contemplatively stirring her orange juice. "I'm sad about moving away from Dad and my friends, but I'm not scared like I was during the divorce. Because I know we'll still be a family, just with more driving." Her simple wisdom captured the essence of what we had managed to build from the ashes of bitter conflict. Not the intact nuclear family we had once envisioned, but a restructured family system that provided security, consistency, and love across geographical distance. As we said our temporary goodbyes in the parking lot, Rebecca surprised me with a brief hug. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up when I tried to push you away." The statement encapsulated our journey, from her attempt to eliminate my parental role to her eventual recognition of its irreplaceable value. The evidence Michael Reeves had gathered had prevented an irreversible mistake, but the healing that followed had been our shared accomplishment. Today, 3 years removed from that preliminary hearing where Rebecca called me an unfit father, our co-parenting relationship serves as an unlikely success story. Emma and Liam travel between Indianapolis and Chicago with confidence rather than anxiety, secure in the knowledge that both parents remain actively engaged in their lives regardless of physical distance. Rebecca and I maintain regular communication about parenting matters and occasionally share meals together when the children's activities bring us to the same location. The private investigator's evidence didn't just change the legal outcome of our custody battle. It created the opportunity for truth and accountability that ultimately allowed a healthier family system to emerge. Sometimes the most difficult paths lead to the most valuable destinations, not because of the conflict itself, but because of the growth it eventually demands from everyone involved. When friends facing their own custody challenges ask for advice, I emphasize that gathering evidence was only the beginning. The harder work came afterward, setting aside vindication in favor of cooperation, choosing the children's well-being over personal satisfaction, and remaining open to new possibilities rather than clinging to legal victories. The evidence Michael gathered gave me leverage in a broken system, but what we built with that leverage, a functional co-parenting relationship based on mutual respect, required ongoing commitment from both Rebecca and me. In the end, my children didn't need parents who defeated each other in court. They needed parents who could grow beyond their worst moments to create stability across separate households. The evidence made that growth possible by confronting destructive patterns before they became irreversible. The greatest victory wasn't winning equal custody, but establishing the foundation for Emma and Liam to maintain meaningful relationships with both parents despite the complexity of our adult conflicts. That foundation now supports them as they continue to grow, develop their own identities, and navigate the inevitable challenges of adolescence. Whatever difficulties lie ahead, they face them with the security of knowing their family remains intact, not in its original form, but in a restructured version that honors the essential connections between parents and children, regardless of marital status or geographical distance. Life settled into a new rhythm as the children adapted to splitting their time between Chicago and Indianapolis. The 4-hour drive became a familiar journey, marked by audiobooks we enjoyed together, and roadside diners that became tradition. Emma, now 12, developed an interest in photography, documenting our travels with an old digital camera I had given her. Liam, at 10, had become obsessed with regional architecture, pointing out the changing styles as we moved from urban Chicago through Indiana's small towns. These weekend trips, initially viewed as a necessary compromise, had transformed into valuable bonding experiences that might never have developed in a traditional custody arrangement. Rebecca maintained her commitment to our co-parenting relationship, despite the distance. She kept me informed about daily developments, included me in school conferences via video calls, and ensured the children maintained consistent communication with me during her parenting time. The geographic separation that might have strained our arrangement instead clarified our priorities and removed the friction of frequent in-person exchanges. During one of my weekend pickups, Rebecca invited me inside her Chicago apartment, rather than having the children meet me in the lobby as usual. "I wanted to show you Emma's science project," she explained. "She's been working on it all week and is hoping you'll help her finish the display portion this weekend." The apartment was bright and modern, photos of the children prominently displayed alongside family artifacts from our previous life together. The handmade pottery bowl from our trip to New Mexico, the carved wooden elephant Liam had given Rebecca for Mother's Day years ago. I noticed she had hung the children's artwork in matching frames, an organizational touch I'd implemented in my own home. These small continuities between households provided subtle stability for Emma and Liam. As Rebecca showed me Emma's elaborate solar system model, constructed with meticulous attention to planetary details, a realization struck me. 3 years earlier, we had been locked in bitter conflict over whether I could be trusted with basic caregiving, let alone supporting academic development. Now we were casually discussing physics concepts and display techniques as partners in our daughter's education. The transformation wasn't just in our legal arrangement, but in our fundamental orientation toward each other, from adversaries to allies in raising our children. "You've really created a nice home here," I commented, noticing how the space balanced adult aesthetics with child-friendly functionality. "Thanks. I tried to incorporate some of your organizational ideas, actually. The homework station setup works better than what I initially had." Her acknowledgement of borrowing my approaches represented significant growth from the days when any suggestion from me was perceived as criticism. "How are you liking the new position?" I asked. Rebecca had recently been promoted to marketing director, a role that came with increased responsibility and travel requirements. She sighed, rubbing her temple in a familiar gesture of stress. "It's challenging. The promotion came with expectations about availability that are harder to meet as a single parent than I anticipated." "Anything I can help with?" I offered, surprising myself with the genuineness of the question. Her career challenges were technically not my concern, but they affected our children's stability. Rebecca looked equally surprised. "Actually, yes. I have 3 business trips coming up next month that overlap with my parenting time. I was going to ask if you could take the kids for those weeks, which would mean some school days in Indianapolis." "Of course. We can make that work." The request represented significant trust, allowing me to manage school responsibilities that had previously been her domain. "I can commute with them to Chicago if that's easier, stay at a hotel near their school." She shook her head. "That's unnecessary. They can miss a few days or do remote learning. Their teachers are flexible." She hesitated before adding, "I appreciate this, Nathan. I know it's outside our agreement." That's what co-parenting is supposed to be. Flexibility when needed. "You've done the same for me." My response wasn't performative generosity, but simple truth. Our ability to adapt to each other's needs had become the cornerstone of our functional arrangement. As the children bounded into the room, excited for our weekend together, I observed how they moved comfortably between Rebecca and me, showing none of the anxiety or divided loyalty that had characterized earlier transitions. Emma hugged her mother goodbye with easy affection, then immediately launched into details about her science project, seamlessly transferring her enthusiasm from one parent to the other. Liam showed Rebecca the book he wanted to bring along, seeking her opinion while simultaneously including me in the conversation. These fluid interactions between the three of us represented healing I once thought impossible. During the drive back to Indianapolis, Emma raised an unexpected topic. "Dad, do you think you'll ever get married again?" The question caught me off guard. "I haven't really thought about it much. Why do you ask?" She shrugged with the exaggerated casualness of pre-adolescence that poorly masked genuine concern. "Mom's been dating that guy Mark for a while now. She said they're getting more serious, whatever that means." This was news to me. Rebecca had mentioned dating occasionally, but hadn't discussed anyone specific becoming a significant presence. Our agreement included consulting each other before introducing romantic partners to the children, which meant either this relationship had progressed quickly or Rebecca had been hesitant to raise the subject. "How do you feel about that?" I asked carefully. "He's okay. Kind of tries too hard to be cool." She picked at a thread on her backpack. "But it feels weird, like things are changing again." From the back seat, Liam chimed in. "He doesn't know how to play Minecraft properly, and he called me sport, which nobody actually says." I suppressed a smile at Liam's critique while recognizing the underlying concerns. Changes can be unsettling, even when the people involved are perfectly nice. "Have you talked to Mom about how you're feeling?" Emma shook her head. "She seems happy. I don't want to make her feel bad. Part of my job and Mom's job is to help you navigate feelings, even complicated ones. I'm sure she'd want to know if you're feeling uncomfortable." "Could you talk to her?" Emma asked. "It's easier when you guys figure things out first." The request reflected how far we'd come. My children now viewed Rebecca and me as a united parental team who could address concerns collaboratively rather than as opponents who might use their vulnerabilities as ammunition. "I can do that. But I think eventually you'll need to share your feelings with her directly too." That evening, after the children were settled in bed, I texted Rebecca. "The kids mentioned Mark today. Sounds like things are getting serious. They seem a bit unsettled by the change. Might be worth a conversation when they return." Her response came quickly. "I was planning to talk to you about him next week. It has gotten more serious. Sorry they brought it up before I did. We'll definitely discuss with them. Would you be open to meeting him sometime? Might help normalize things." The suggestion made sense, but triggered complicated emotions. Intellectual acceptance of Rebecca moving forward romantically was different from the reality of meeting her new partner. Still, prioritizing the children's adjustment meant setting aside personal discomfort. Sure, whatever helps the kids feel comfortable with the transition. Over the next few months, our co-parenting relationship faced this new test, integrating Rebecca's boyfriend into the complex family system we had carefully constructed. Mark Jenkins was a marketing executive Rebecca had met through professional circles, divorced with one teenage daughter who lived primarily with her mother in Michigan. By all objective measures, he seemed thoughtful and genuinely interested in building appropriate relationships with Emma and Liam. Our first meeting occurred during a school band concert, neutral territory focused on the children rather than adult relationships. Mark extended his hand with a direct gaze that acknowledged the inherent awkwardness. "Nathan, good to finally meet you. The kids talk about you constantly." "All complaints about my dad jokes, I'm sure," I replied, accepting his handshake with deliberate collegiality. Rebecca stood slightly apart, watching our interaction with visible nervousness. "Actually, mostly about your weekend adventures. The planetarium exhibition was apparently mind-blowing. His reference to specific activities I'd shared with the children suggested he listened when they spoke, a quality I reluctantly respected. The concert provided structured focus, limiting our interaction to necessary civility. Afterward, Emma looked between the three adults with obvious relief. "That wasn't as weird as I thought it would be," she whispered to me as we separated for her to return to Rebecca's care. Over the following weeks, Mark's presence became a more regular feature of the children's Chicago life. Rebecca maintained appropriate boundaries, ensuring he wasn't overstepping parental roles and keeping me informed about his involvement. The children's initial wariness gradually lessened as they determined he wasn't attempting to replace me, but rather adding another supportive adult to their ecosystem. 6 months into Rebecca's relationship with Mark, she requested another serious conversation during one of my pickups. The children were exploring a nearby park, giving us privacy to discuss whatever sensitive topic she wanted to address. "Mark has asked me to marry him," she said directly. "I haven't given him an answer yet because I wanted to talk with you first and then with the kids." The statement landed heavily, despite its predictability. Rebecca had found stable partnership again, while I remained singularly focused on co-parenting and career. "Congratulations," I offered, finding genuine goodwill beneath the complex emotions. "He seems like a good person." "He is." She twisted her hands nervously, but this would mean another significant change for Emma and Liam. They finally adjusted to our current arrangement, and I don't want to disrupt their stability. "What would change practically?" I asked, focusing on concrete implications rather than emotional ones. "We'd move to a slightly larger condo in the same neighborhood, same schools. Mark travels frequently for work, so the actual day-to-day wouldn't change dramatically. His daughter Zoe would visit monthly, which adds another relationship dynamic. I considered the potential impact on our carefully balanced co-parenting arrangement. And our schedule? Your commitment to facilitating my relationship with them? That wouldn't change," she affirmed quickly. "Mark understands and respects our co-parenting relationship. He's seen how well it works for the kids." We discussed practical considerations for nearly an hour, how to present this development to the children, strategies for helping them adjust, maintaining consistency across increasingly complex family boundaries. The conversation held none of the antagonism that would have dominated similar discussions during our divorce. Instead, we functioned as collaborative problem solvers, prioritizing the children's emotional well-being above personal interests. As we concluded, Rebecca added something unexpected. "I want you to know that I've been clear with Mark about your importance in the kids' lives. There's no agenda to diminish your role or replace you. The opposite, actually. I've told him that our cooperative co-parenting is non-negotiable." The statement represented extraordinary evolution from her earlier attempts to minimize my parental involvement. "I appreciate that, and I'll support this transition however I can." She smiled tentatively. "Remember when I tried to convince a judge you were an unfit father? We've come a long way." "The evidence suggested otherwise," I replied, referencing Michael Reeves's investigation without rancor. "Thank God it did," she said softly. "The kids would have lost so much if I'd succeeded." The acknowledgement required no response. We had both grown beyond keeping score of past mistakes, focusing instead on the family structure we continued to build together. When Rebecca officially accepted Mark's proposal, we arranged a family meeting with Emma and Liam to discuss the upcoming changes. The children's reactions were mixed. Excitement about the wedding festivities, combined with anxiety about shifting family dynamics and uncertainty about how a step-parent would affect their relationship with me. "Does this mean we'll see Dad?" Less, Liam asked directly, his small face serious. Absolutely not, Rebecca assured him. Your schedule with Dad stays exactly the same. Mark isn't replacing anyone, he's joining our extended family. Like an addition, not a subtraction, I added, using mathematical terms that resonated with Liam's logical thinking. Emma's concerns were more nuanced. What do I call him? And what happens with his daughter? Is she like a stepsister or what? We addressed each question honestly, acknowledging uncertainties where they existed. You can call him Mark, unless you eventually feel comfortable with something else. That's completely your choice, Rebecca explained. And Zoe would technically be your stepsister, but relationships develop at their own pace. You don't have to force any particular dynamic. Throughout this conversation, I maintained supportive engagement despite the personal complexity of discussing my ex-wife's remarriage with our children. My focus remained on minimizing their stress rather than processing my own mixed emotions. Later, alone in my home office, I allowed myself to acknowledge the peculiar grief that accompanied this milestone. Not for the marriage I had lost, which had ended long before the divorce, but for the traditional family structure that would now be permanently replaced by something more complicated. The wedding planning proceeded with considerable attention to how various elements would affect Emma and Liam. Rebecca and Mark opted for a small ceremony rather than an elaborate event, including the children in meaningful ways without placing them at the center of adult celebrations. When Rebecca tentatively asked if I would be comfortable attending to provide stability for Emma and Liam, I agreed, despite the inherent awkwardness. My presence would signal continuity and cooperation to our children, values that had become foundational to our co-parenting approach. The ceremony itself was surprisingly comfortable, held in a garden venue with only 30 guests. Emma served as junior bridesmaid, while Liam proudly carried the rings. I sat with Rebecca's parents, with whom I had maintained a cordial relationship, despite the divorce. Throughout the event, I focused on the children, ensuring they felt supported during this significant transition in their family structure. During the reception, Mark sought me out for a private conversation. I wanted to thank you for being here today, he said, the sincerity in his tone unmistakable. I know it's an unusual situation, but your presence means everything to Emma and Liam. They're my priority, I replied simply, always will be. He nodded. I respect the co-parenting relationship you and Rebecca have built. I've seen how it benefits the kids, and I want you to know I'm committed to supporting it, not interfering. I appreciate that. I studied him thoughtfully. They're great kids, complex and challenging sometimes, but remarkable people. They are, and they reflect both of you, your values, your priorities. He hesitated before adding, I'm not trying to replace you. I couldn't even if I wanted to. I'm just hoping to be another positive adult in their lives. The conversation solidified my cautious optimism about Mark's role. His acknowledgement of boundaries and respect for my relationship with the children suggested he would be a constructive addition to our complex family system rather than a disruptive force. As Rebecca and Mark adapted to married life, our co-parenting arrangement required minor adjustments but remained fundamentally unchanged. The children gradually incorporated Mark into their Chicago routine while maintaining their special connections with me during Indianapolis time. Rebecca's commitment to facilitating my relationship with Emma and Liam never wavered, even as she integrated into a new blended family that included occasional visits from Mark's daughter Zoe. 6 months after the wedding, an unexpected professional opportunity presented itself to me, leading a sustainable housing initiative in Chicago, less than 2 miles from Rebecca and Mark's neighborhood. The position aligned perfectly with my career goals while potentially resolving the geographic separation from my children. The timing seemed serendipitous, aligning with my lease renewal in Indianapolis and Emma's transition to middle school. Before pursuing the opportunity seriously, I broached the subject with Rebecca during our monthly co-parenting check-in. "I've been offered a position in Chicago," I explained. "It would mean relocating within the next few months if I accept." Her surprise was evident. "You'd move to Chicago? What about your firm in Indianapolis?" "I'd be leaving it. This position is with Urban Sustainable Development, their new residential division focused on eco-friendly, affordable housing. It's an extraordinary opportunity professionally, but I wanted to discuss the personal implications before making any decisions." Rebecca processed this information thoughtfully. "You'd be closer to the kids. We could adjust the parenting schedule to allow for more frequent but shorter visits rather than concentrated weekends. They could potentially even split weeks between households if we lived close enough." That's what I was thinking, but it would change the dynamic we've established. I wanted to make sure you'd be comfortable with that shift before pursuing it further. She smiled with genuine warmth. "Nathan, I think it would be wonderful for Emma and Liam to have you in the same city. They miss you between visits, especially as they're getting older and their activities are becoming more important to them. Being able to attend a Tuesday night band concert or Thursday soccer game would mean everything to them." Her enthusiastic support contrasted sharply with the woman who had once attempted to minimize my parental involvement. "Mark would be okay with me having a more regular presence?" I asked, acknowledging the potential complication. "He understands that you're their father. Having you geographically closer doesn't change any fundamental dynamics. It just makes logistics easier for everyone." She hesitated before adding, "Actually, he mentioned recently that he thought the kids would benefit from seeing you more regularly." This unexpected endorsement from Rebecca's new husband reflected the strength of the co-parenting foundation we had established. "In that case, I'll move forward with the interview process. It's competitive, so there's no guarantee I'll get the position." 2 months and several intensive interviews later, I received the job offer with terms that exceeded my expectations. The transition would require selling my Indianapolis home, finding suitable housing in Chicago near the children's school district, and establishing an entirely new professional network. These logistical challenges paled compared to the opportunity of daily involvement in Emma and Liam's lives. Rebecca and Mark proved unexpectedly helpful during the relocation process. Mark, with his extensive Chicago business connections, recommended several promising housing options in the neighborhood. Rebecca coordinated with the children's schools to add me to all communication lists and introduce me to key parents in their social circles. This practical support demonstrated how completely our relationship had transformed from adversarial to collaborative. The first morning I dropped Emma and Liam at school from my new Chicago apartment marked an extraordinary milestone. This mundane parental task, one I had been told 3 years earlier I wasn't competent to manage, now symbolized the complete restoration of my parental role. As the children waved goodbye, comfortable and confident in the seamless transition between households, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The evidence Michael Reeves had gathered hadn't just altered a legal outcome. It had created space for truth that ultimately allowed healing none of us could have anticipated. Rebecca's initial deception, exposed through documentation and witness testimony, had eventually yielded to genuine growth and self-reflection. My own rigidity and reactivity during the divorce had softened into flexible cooperation. And most importantly, Emma and Liam had regained access to both parents without the burden of conflict or divided loyalties. Our renegotiated parenting schedule took advantage of proximity, shifting from alternate weekends to a more integrated approach. The children spent Monday and Tuesday nights with Rebecca and Mark, Wednesday and Thursday with me, and we alternated weekends. This arrangement allowed both households to maintain significant involvement while providing the children with predictable routines. For special events or extracurricular activities, we adjusted fluidly, prioritizing the children's needs over strict adherence to the schedule. As we settled into this new dynamic, Rebecca invited me to dinner at their condo, not for a specific discussion or problem-solving session, but simply to celebrate the functional family system we had created. Seated around their dining table with Emma and Liam chattering about school projects, Mark discussing a community garden initiative he thought might interest me, and Rebecca serving a meal that incorporated favorites from both households, I experienced profound gratitude for the journey we had navigated. Remember when we could barely speak civilly to each other at custody exchanges, Rebecca whispered, as we cleared dishes together afterward. Now look at us, functional, almost friends hosting family dinners together. The children made it worth finding a better way, I replied, watching as Mark helped Liam with a complex Lego structure in the living room while Emma practiced her presentation for science class. They did, but we did the work too. She handed me a plate to dry. I never imagined we'd end up here when I was trying to take them away from you. Neither did I when I hired that investigator. She smiled wryly. Best money you ever spent, as it turned out, for all of us. Her acknowledgement of how the evidence-gathering that had once felt adversarial had ultimately benefited our entire family reflected the genuine perspective shift that had occurred. What began as a tool in bitter conflict had become the foundation for unprecedented healing. As my life in Chicago evolved, I eventually began dating again. Cautiously at first, then more openly as I found my footing in post-divorce relationships. When I met Allison, a landscape architect whose children attended the same school as Emma and Liam, the connection developed naturally through shared interests and values. After 6 months of dating, when the relationship had proven its stability, I approached Rebecca about introducing Allison to the children. I'd like to have Allison join us for dinner this weekend, I explained during our weekly co-parenting phone call. Nothing dramatic or high pressure, just normalizing her presence. If you think the kids are ready for that step. They've mentioned her already, Rebecca admitted. Emma's figured out that you're dating someone specific rather than just working late occasionally. She's perceptive, I acknowledged. So you think they're comfortable with meeting her? I think it's appropriate timing. We established our new normal before introducing this change, which helps. Her tone became slightly tentative. Would you be open to having the introduction happen at our place? Neutral territory might make it less pressure-filled for everyone. The offer surprised me, Rebecca volunteering her home for my significant other to meet our children represented extraordinary trust and cooperation. That's generous, are you sure? Mark suggested it, actually. The kids might feel more comfortable with both of us present for this transition. We could make it casual. A barbecue or something simple. The thoughtfulness of their approach moved me deeply. We had created a co-parenting relationship so secure that introducing new partners was approached collaboratively rather than competitively. That sounds perfect. Thank you. The introduction proceeded exactly as planned, low-key, focused on the children's comfort, with both biological parents present to signal approval of expanding family connections. Emma and Liam approached meeting Allison with curiosity rather than anxiety, their security in existing relationships providing foundation for new ones to develop naturally. As our blended family configurations continued evolving, the foundation established through those difficult early years provided stability through each transition. The evidence that had once seemed like ammunition in a bitter custody battle had ultimately created the opportunity for truth, accountability, and growth that benefited everyone involved. Especially Emma and Liam, who now navigated adolescence with the security of knowing their entire family system prioritized their well-being above adult conflicts. When people facing their own custody challenges ask what made the difference in our unusual journey from high conflict to high cooperation, I explain that the evidence Michael Reeves gathered was merely the catalyst. The real transformation came through the difficult ongoing work of setting aside vindication in favor of cooperation, choosing children's needs over adult pride, and remaining open to possibilities beyond what either of us could initially imagine. What began as a desperate attempt to prevent parental alienation eventually created space for an expanded definition of family that included all the adults who loved Emma and Liam, biological parents, step-parents, and eventually partners, who became meaningful figures in an ever-widening circle of care. As the years progressed, our unconventional family structure continued to evolve in ways I never could have anticipated during those dark days of custody battles. Emma entered high school with confidence and academic focus. Her earlier anxiety about divided loyalties replaced with the security of knowing her entire support system worked in harmony. Liam, now in middle school, had developed his interest in architecture into serious consideration of future career paths, often joining me at my office on professional development days to learn about sustainable design principles. The proximity of our Chicago households had proven invaluable for maintaining consistent involvement in their increasingly complex lives of extracurricular activities, social relationships, and academic challenges. My relationship with Allison had deepened into a commitment that surprised me with its ease and natural progression. After 2 years of dating, we began discussing the possibility of marriage, a step I approached with careful consideration of how it would affect not just Emma and Liam, but our entire interconnected family system. Allison's daughters, Sophie and Madeline, had developed comfortable relationships with my children, creating weekend gatherings that often resembled those large, blended families depicted in heartwarming holiday films, rather than the fragmented aftermath of divorce I had once feared. Before finalizing any decisions about marriage, I initiated conversations with everyone who would be affected. First with Emma and Liam individually to gauge their comfort levels, then with Rebecca and Mark to ensure transparent communication about this significant change. Emma, now 15 and fiercely independent, approached the discussion with typical adolescent practicality. "I like Allison," she stated when I broached the subject during one of our father-daughter coffee outings. "She doesn't try too hard like some of my friends' parents' new spouses. She just sort of lets things happen naturally. That's one of the things I appreciate about her, too," I acknowledged. "How would you feel about her becoming a more permanent part of our family structure?" Emma stirred her latte thoughtfully. "You mean marriage? That seems logical at this point. You've been together longer than most of my friends' parents have been dating people. Besides, Sophie and Maddie already feel like family anyway." Her matter-of-fact acceptance, while lacking romantic sentiment, revealed the solid foundation we had established. "And you don't have concerns about how it might change things for us, our time together, our household dynamics?" She gave me the slightly exasperated look teenagers reserve for adults asking obvious questions. "Dad, our family hasn't been traditional since I was 9. We've adapted to Mom remarrying, to you moving to Chicago, to having step-siblings who visit regularly. Adding one more official relationship just formalizes what's already working." Liam's reaction showed more emotional vulnerability despite his attempts at casual acceptance. "So Sophie and Maddie would be like, officially my stepsisters?" he asked, his focus on the practical implications of blending families. "That would be the technical term, yes, but relationships develop at their own pace, regardless of labels. You all seem to get along well already." He nodded slowly. "Allison's cool. She helped me with that science project when you were stuck in that meeting, and she actually knew stuff about structural engineering that even you didn't explain well." He paused, then asked the question that revealed his deeper concern. Would we still have our Wednesday night bike rides, just the two of us? The question touched me deeply. This ritual of weekly evening rides along the lakefront had become sacred space for father-son connection. Absolutely. Some things don't change regardless of family configuration. That time is ours. His relief was palpable. Then I think it's good. Sophie's annoying sometimes, but mostly because she's 12 and thinks she knows everything. But Maddie taught me that cool skateboard trick, so that balances it out. The mathematical approach to relationship evaluation made me smile. Relationships often work that way, some challenges balanced by positive connections. My conversation with Rebecca and Mark took place over dinner at a restaurant near their home, a quarterly tradition we had established for addressing significant co-parenting matters outside the children's presence. I waited until we had ordered before introducing the topic. I wanted to let you know that I'm considering proposing to Allison, I said directly. Given how our families are interconnected, I thought it was important to discuss this with you before finalizing any decisions. Rebecca's expression showed genuine warmth rather than the complicated emotions I might once have expected. That's wonderful news, Nathan. The kids adore her, and it's obvious how good she is for you. Mark nodded agreement. Congratulations. Allison brings a great dynamic to family gatherings. Emma mentioned how helpful she's been with college research too. Their unqualified support reflected how completely our co-parenting relationship had transcended the boundaries of typical post-divorce interactions. I appreciate that. I've talked with Emma and Liam already, and they seem comfortable with the idea. My main priority is ensuring this transition enhances rather than disrupts their sense of stability. Based on how you've handled every other transition, I have complete confidence in your approach, Rebecca said. You've always put the kids first, even when it would have been easier not to. The acknowledgement from someone who had once questioned my parental commitment in court documents represented the culmination of years of consistent, dedicated fathering. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Have you thought about living arrangements? Mark asked practically. Would you stay in your current place or look for something that accommodates everyone more comfortably? We've discussed possibly finding a larger home eventually, but maintaining proximity to your neighborhood for consistency with the kids' schools and activities would be non-negotiable. The consideration of Rebecca and Mark's input on such personal decisions might seem unusual in conventional post-divorce relationships, but our interwoven family system made such consultation both practical and respectful. Rebecca offered thoughts on neighborhoods with larger homes still within the school district, while Mark suggested potential timing that would minimize disruption to the children's academic schedules. The conversation flowed with the easy collaboration of partners working towards shared goals rather than the guarded communication of former spouses. As dinner concluded, Rebecca said something that captured how far we had traveled from adversaries to allies. When I look at where we started and where we are now, it sometimes feels impossible that we're the same people who hired lawyers and private investigators against each other. The evidence changed our trajectory, I acknowledged, but what we built afterward came from choices we all made repeatedly over years. The best choice I made was accepting that you deserved equal presence in their lives, she said with remarkable candor, even if I had to be forced into that realization initially. The proposal to Allison took place on a summer evening at the Chicago Botanic Garden, with Emma and Liam's enthusiastic participation in the planning. Allison's daughters Sophie and Madeline helped create a scavenger hunt through the gardens that led to a lakeside gazebo where I waited with the ring. Her joyful acceptance set in motion the next phase of our family's evolution, the official merging of two households that had already functioned as an extended family unit in many practical ways. In planning our wedding, we prioritized honoring existing family bonds while celebrating new connections. Emma served as Alison's bridesmaid, alongside Madeline, while Liam and Sophie participated as junior attendants. Most surprisingly, Rebecca offered to host the rehearsal dinner at her home, transforming what might have been an awkward obligation into a genuine celebration of our interconnected family web. The wedding itself exemplified the unique family structure we had created. My former mother-in-law seated beside Alison's parents, Rebecca and Mark, joining the receiving line to welcome guests, the children from both families performing a musical piece they had secretly prepared. What might have seemed bizarre to outsiders felt perfectly natural to those who had witnessed our journey from bitter custody disputes to functional extended family. During the reception, Michael Reeves approached me, his presence a surprise, as he had been invited more as a courtesy than with expectation of attendance. The private investigator whose evidence had altered the course of our family history had maintained occasional contact over the years, but his appearance at this celebration held special significance. "Congratulations," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "This is quite a beautiful outcome." "Thank you for coming," I replied sincerely, "and for everything that led to this point, however unexpectedly." He glanced around at the mingling family configurations, Rebecca chatting comfortably with Alison's mother, Mark helping Liam adjust his tie, Emma and Madeline taking photos together by the decorative fountain. In 15 years of family investigation work, I've rarely seen evidence lead to this kind of healing. Usually, it just provides leverage for continued conflict. The evidence was just the beginning, I acknowledged. But what happened afterward required everyone choosing something different than the expected script. Michael nodded thoughtfully. "I've started recommending your case study, anonymized, of course, in training sessions for new investigators, as an example of how truth, however painful initially, creates potential for genuine resolution rather than just legal victories." The idea that our journey had become instructive for others facing similar challenges added unexpected meaning to the difficult path we had traveled. I'm honored by that. Truth was the foundation we needed, even when it wasn't what anyone wanted to hear. As our newly formalized blended family settled into daily rhythms, the practical benefits of our cooperative approach became increasingly apparent. The children moved between 3 interconnected households: Rebecca and Mark's home, my new residence with Alison and her daughters, and Alison's ex-husband James's apartment, where Sophie and Madeline spent alternate weekends. Rather than rigid adherence to court-mandated schedules, we maintained flexibility based on the children's activities, special events, and occasional family gatherings that included all configurations. Holidays, which often become battlegrounds, in post-divorce families, transformed into opportunities for creative celebration. Thanksgiving featured a progressive meal spanning all 3 households, with different courses served at each location. Christmas morning began with individual family traditions, followed by an afternoon gathering where all children exchanged gifts, regardless of biological connection. Birthdays were celebrated collaboratively, with all parental figures contributing to making each child feel valued and central. This extraordinary level of cooperation didn't develop without challenges. There were still occasional disagreements about discipline approaches, academic expectations, and teenage privileges. The difference was in how we addressed these conflicts. Through direct communication, mutual respect, and unwavering focus on the children's well-being, rather than adult pride or past grievances. When Emma, now 16, began dating seriously for the first time, all parents coordinated expectations and boundaries rather than establishing disconnected rules that could be manipulated between households. When Liam struggled with math, despite previously excelling in the subject, We combined resources, Mark's analytical skills, my practical applications, and Rebecca's patient coaching, rather than duplicating efforts or undermining each other's approaches. When Sophie experienced friendship drama that affected her interactions with all siblings, the entire parental team maintained consistent messaging about healthy relationship boundaries. The most profound testament to our successful co-parenting came unexpectedly during Emma's college application process. As she prepared her personal statement, she asked me to review an early draft. The essay began. Most people assume divorce creates broken families, but my experience showed me that family is defined by love and commitment, not legal documents or living arrangements. When my parents separated, they eventually created something more functional than many intact families I observe. A network of adults who set aside personal differences to prioritize children's needs. Her insightful analysis of our unconventional family structure continued with remarkable maturity. The private investigator my father hired during their custody dispute could have intensified conflict. Instead, the evidence he gathered ultimately forced honesty that became the foundation for healing. What began as ammunition in a legal battle became the catalyst for growth that benefited everyone involved, especially the children who might otherwise have lost meaningful connection with one parent. Reading her perspective brought tears to my eyes, not just for the wisdom beyond her years, but for the realization that what had felt like the darkest period of my life had ultimately given my daughter profound insights about conflict resolution, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. The evidence that once seemed merely instrumental in securing my parental rights had ultimately provided my children with an extraordinary education in human relationships. When I shared Emma's essay with Rebecca during our next co-parenting check-in, she too was visibly moved. "She understands more than I realized," Rebecca said softly, "about all of it. The mistakes, the growth, the choices we made afterward." "She's had a unique vantage point," I acknowledged, "watching adults navigate conflict and forge something constructive from it." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened without the investigator's evidence?" Rebecca asked. "If I had succeeded in limiting your role to weekends and holidays?" The question had occasionally crossed my mind during difficult moments in our co-parenting journey. I think about the relationship I would have missed with them, the ordinary moments that ultimately matter more than big events, homework discussions, morning routines, impromptu conversations about their days. She nodded thoughtfully. "I've thought about it too. I was so convinced I was right, that they needed me more, that your work commitments made you less available emotionally. The evidence didn't just change the legal outcome, it forced me to question my own narrative. We all have selective perception when we're hurt or afraid," I offered. The evidence provided objective reality we couldn't avoid or rationalize away. As Emma's college acceptances arrived and decisions loomed, our entire extended family collaborated on campus visits, financial planning, and emotional preparation for this significant transition. The college consultation meeting included not just Rebecca and me as biological parents, but Mark and Allison as step-parents who had contributed significantly to Emma's development. The college admissions counselor remarked that she rarely encountered divorce situations with such functional communication between all parental figures. Emma's eventual decision to attend Northwestern University reflected the confidence of someone secure in her family foundation regardless of geographical distance. During her freshman orientation, all 4 parents attended together, presenting a united support system that clearly distinguished us from many families navigating similar transitions. With palpable tension or awkward distance, as we helped Emma settle into her dormitory, arranging the space and making final preparations, Rebecca pulled me aside for a private moment. "I never thanked you properly," she said quietly. "For what specifically?" I asked, genuinely uncertain. Which aspect of our complex history she was referencing? For fighting for them the way you did, for not accepting the narrative I was creating about your importance in their lives. She glanced toward Emma, who was excitedly arranging books on her new desk. If you had accepted the initial custody arrangement without challenging it, if you hadn't gathered evidence to counter my claims, she wouldn't be who she is today. The acknowledgement represented extraordinary growth from the woman who had once stood in a courtroom calling me an unfit father. We all contributed to the adults they're becoming, I replied, including her in the credit genuinely deserved. The evidence just gave us the opportunity to find a better way forward. As we prepared to leave Emma in her new college environment, our unconventional family gathered for a final dinner together. Biological parents, step-parents, and siblings from multiple relationships united in celebrating this milestone. Looking around the table at the interconnected lives we had created from what could have been permanently fractured relationships, I reflected on the extraordinary journey from that preliminary custody hearing. The evidence my private investigator gathered hadn't just secured my legal rights as a father. It had created the foundation for a family system that transcended conventional definitions and provided our children with an education in conflict, resolution, forgiveness, and collaborative problem-solving that would serve them throughout their lives. What began as a desperate attempt to maintain my relationship with my children had ultimately transformed into an unexpected gift for everyone involved. The opportunity to build something more authentic and functional than what existed before. When people facing their own custody challenges ask what made the difference in our journey, I explain that the evidence was merely the catalyst. The real transformation came through the difficult ongoing work of choosing cooperation over conflict, children's needs over adult pride, and possibilities over limitations. The private investigator's evidence didn't just change the legal outcome of our custody battle. It changed how we understood ourselves as parents and eventually as partners in raising remarkable children who benefited from more love and support than any court could have mandated. Time moves swiftly when you're watching. Your children grow. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, we found ourselves preparing for Liam's high school graduation. The gangly 7-year-old, who had once feared I was abandoning him, now stood confident at 18, accepted to Cornell's architecture program with a substantial merit scholarship. Emma, completing her junior year at Northwestern, drove home for the occasion, bringing her serious boyfriend Tyler, whom we had all grown to appreciate over the past year. The graduation ceremony itself embodied everything we had built as an extended family. Rebecca and Mark sat beside Allison and me, with Sophie and Madeline squeezed between us all, the older girls now young women themselves. James, Allison's ex-husband, joined us with his new wife Diane, completing our unconventional but remarkably functional family circle. As Liam crossed the stage to receive his diploma, the enthusiastic cheers came from multiple rows of genuine supporters rather than awkwardly separated family factions. The celebration afterward at our home featured the easy rhythm we had developed over years of shared milestones. Rebecca arranged the buffet while Mark grilled. Allison's mother chatted comfortably with my parents, who had finally accepted the divorce and subsequent relationships after seeing how well the children had thrived. Emma moved easily between all the adults, her former anxiety about divided loyalties long replaced with appreciation for her expansive support network. During a quiet moment, I found Liam alone on the back deck, contemplating something with unusual seriousness for what should have been a purely celebratory day. "Everything okay?" I asked, leaning against the railing beside him. He nodded slowly, just thinking about how different things could have been. "In what way?" Emma told me more about the custody battle when we were little, about how Mom tried to keep you from having us equally and how you hired someone to gather evidence. His direct gaze held no accusation, only curiosity. She said it was a turning point, that without it, we might have grown up barely knowing you. The conversation caught me off guard. We had never hidden the basic facts of our divorce from the children, but had carefully avoided burdening them with details about the uglier aspects of the custody dispute. Emma, with her natural inclination toward understanding relationship dynamics, had apparently pieced together more than we realized. That's partially true, I acknowledged carefully. There was a period when your mother and I couldn't see past our own hurt to what you and Emma truly needed. The evidence helped redirect us toward a healthier path. Mom said something similar last week when we were talking about college. His expression remained thoughtful. She said hiring that investigator was the best thing that could have happened for all of us, even though she hated it at the time. Rebecca's candor with our son about her own growth surprised and moved me. The evidence itself wasn't magical, I explained. What mattered was how everyone chose to respond to it. Your mom especially. Many people would have become more defensive or adversarial, but she eventually used it as an opportunity to reconsider what would truly serve you both. Liam considered this with the analytical mind that had earned him academic recognition. So it wasn't about winning or losing the case. It was about forcing honesty that created the chance for something better. Exactly. The legal outcome mattered for maintaining my relationship with you, but the long-term transformation came from the difficult work everyone did afterward. I gestured toward the gathering inside, where our blended family configurations interacted with genuine warmth. None of this was inevitable or easy. It required constant choice from everyone involved. "I'm giving a speech at dinner," he said. Unexpectedly. "I wanted you to know because it talks about this, about how our family isn't traditional but works better than most of my friends' intact families." Pride swelled as I recognized the emotional intelligence he had developed, partly through navigating our complex family system. I look forward to hearing it. Today, when dinner transitioned to the informal speeches typical of graduation celebrations, Liam stood with uncharacteristic solemnity, tapping his glass for attention. The assembled family, biological relations, step relationships, and connections that defied simple categorization, quieted in anticipation. "Everyone expects these speeches to thank parents for their support and sacrifices," he began, "which I absolutely want to do. But my situation is unique in ways that deserve acknowledgement. I have 4 parents at this table, each of whom has contributed differently but significantly to who I've become." He turned toward Rebecca and Mark. "Mom and Mark, you've provided daily stability, consistent expectations, and a home base I could always count on." His gaze shifted to Allison and me. "Dad and Allison, you've expanded my perspectives, encouraged my architectural interests, and created a second home that never felt secondary." The room remained silent as he continued. "But what truly shaped me wasn't just having multiple supportive adults. It was watching you all transform a situation that could have been defined by conflict into something collaborative and genuinely loving. Most of my friends with divorced parents navigate constant tension, divided loyalties, and the exhaustion of being messengers between hostile households." His eyes moved deliberately around the table. "Instead, you showed me that family isn't defined by legal documents or living arrangements, but by the choice to prioritize relationships over resentments. The private investigator's evidence could have escalated the conflict permanently. Instead, it eventually became the foundation for something none of you could have imagined when you were fighting over custody." Rebecca wiped tears as Liam continued, his composure remarkable for his age. So my graduation isn't just my achievement. Then it represents what all of you built together from what could have been permanently broken. The family surrounding me today isn't what any of you planned, but it's exactly what Emma and I needed. Thank you for showing me that the worst moments can eventually lead to something better if everyone chooses growth over grievance. And the profound silence following his words spoke volumes. This young man had articulated what none of us had fully verbalized, that the difficult journey from bitter custody dispute to functional extended family had provided him and Emma with an extraordinary education in resilience, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. Emma broke the silence, raising her glass. To choosing better possibilities, she offered, her simple toast capturing the essence of our shared journey. As glasses clinked around the table, I caught Rebecca's eye across the gathering. Her slight nod acknowledged what we both recognized, that our children had not just survived our divorce, but had gained wisdom that would serve them throughout their lives precisely because of how we had navigated its challenges. Later that evening, as guests departed and the celebration wound down, Rebecca approached me in a quiet moment. "Liam's speech was remarkable," she said softly. "More insightful than I expected." "He's been observing and processing all these years," I replied, apparently with more understanding than we realized. She nodded thoughtfully. "Do you ever regret hiring that investigator? Not because of the outcome, but because of how it must have felt in the moment, turning our private conflict into documented evidence." The question deserved honest reflection. There were moments during the investigation when it felt wrong, invasive, adversarial, contrary to the partnership we had once shared as parents. But knowing the outcome, no, I don't regret it. The evidence prevented a potentially irreversible mistake. "That's how I've come to see it too," she acknowledged. "At the time I was furious, humiliated, terrified of losing control of the narrative I'd created. Now I'm profoundly grateful. Without that intervention, I might never have recognized what I was destroying." Her candor after all these years still moved me. We all contributed to building something better afterward. The evidence just created the opportunity. "You were always the optimist," she said with a slight smile. "Even during the worst of it, you somehow maintained faith that we could find a better way forward." "Not always," I admitted. "There were dark moments when I feared I'd permanently lost meaningful connection with them. When the temporary arrangement limited me to those brief weekend visits, watching them become increasingly withdrawn and confused, I wasn't feeling particularly optimistic then." She touched my arm briefly, a gesture of acknowledgement. "Thank you for not giving up, for fighting for them in a way that eventually allowed healing rather than continued battle. They deserved that from both of us." As she moved away to help Mark collect serving dishes, I reflected on how completely our relationship had transformed from adversaries to partners in raising our children. The evidence that had once seemed merely instrumental in securing my parental rights had ultimately provided the catalyst for growth none of us could have anticipated during those bitter court proceedings. The following morning, Liam and I continued our tradition of early Sunday bike rides, pedaling along Chicago's lakefront, as we had countless times since my relocation to the city. As an adult on the cusp of independence, he no longer needed these rituals for stability, yet he still valued them for the connection they provided. "I've been thinking about your speech," I said, as we paused to watch the sunrise over Lake Michigan. "About your perspective on our family evolution." He leaned on his handlebars, contemplative in the morning light. "I've been thinking about it for years, actually, trying to understand how something that starts so broken can become something that actually works better than most traditional families." "What conclusions have you reached?" I asked, genuinely curious about his insights. That intention matters. More than structure, he replied thoughtfully. Most families, divorced or intact, operate on autopilot, following expected scripts without questioning whether they serve everyone involved. You all had to deliberately design something different, because the conventional approaches weren't working. His observation struck me as remarkably perceptive. That's insightful. The lack of established blueprint forced creativity. And honesty, he added. After that investigator exposed Mom's tactics, continuing with convenient fictions wasn't possible. Everyone had to acknowledge reality, however uncomfortable. The maturity of his analysis reminded me how profoundly children absorb the dynamics surrounding them, often with greater clarity than the adults creating those dynamics. You and Emma deserved better than what was happening initially, I acknowledged. The evidence helped us provide that eventually, though the process wasn't always graceful. He smiled slightly. I don't remember much from that period directly, mostly what Emma has told me and what I've observed since. But I do remember the feeling when things started to change, when Mom stopped making those little comments about you being too busy or not knowing how to handle certain situations. When you and she started actually talking during exchanges instead of that cold silence. His memories of that transitional period offered perspective I hadn't considered, how the subtle shifts in parental behavior had registered even to a 7-year-old. The small changes often matter most to children, I reflected. Consistency in the daily interactions rather than dramatic declarations. As we resumed our ride, Liam mentioned something unexpected. I've been researching family law for a possible minor. The statistics about custody outcomes are pretty depressing. How many cases end with one parent effectively eliminated or marginalized despite starting with shared aspirations for co-parenting? Our situation could easily have become another negative statistic, I acknowledged. The system isn't designed to facilitate cooperation. That's what makes our outcome unusual, he replied. The evidence could have just been ammunition for more conflict. Instead, it eventually became a foundation for something better. I've been wondering if there are ways to build that potential for transformation into the legal process itself. His thinking reflected the problem-solving mindset that had drawn him to architecture, identifying structural issues and envisioning better alternatives. That would be meaningful work, I offered. The current adversarial approach rarely serves children's best interests. As Liam prepared for his transition to college later that summer, our extended family collaborated on practical arrangements and emotional preparation. When Emma had left for Northwestern 3 years earlier, we had established a tradition of a family dinner with all parental figures present the night before departure, a tangible demonstration of our collective support transcending household boundaries. The evening before Liam's departure for Cornell, we gathered at Rebecca and Mark's home, where he had spent the final week of summer reconnecting with childhood spaces before embracing his future. The dinner conversation flowed with reminiscence, practical advice about college transition, and gentle teasing about his legendary messiness that would soon become his roommate's concern. As the evening wound down, Rebecca proposed a toast that captured the culmination of our journey. To Liam, as you embark on this new chapter, you carry with you not just our love and support, but the wisdom gained from watching imperfect people create something beautiful from difficulty. May that knowledge serve you throughout your life. The glasses clinked as Liam acknowledged each parent individually, biological and step, with the easy affection of someone secure in multiple loving connections. The emotional security evident in his interactions represented the ultimate vindication of the difficult path we had navigated, from bitter custody dispute to functional extended family. Later that night, as Alison and I prepared for bed in our own home, she observed something perceptive. Watching all of you together tonight, the ease, the genuine affection despite the complicated history, it's remarkable. Most people never achieve that level of healing with former spouses. The evidence created accountability that made continued deception impossible, I reflected. But the healing afterward required everyone choosing something different than the expected script of ongoing animosity. The private investigator's evidence may have won the legal battle, she noted, but the war was only truly resolved when everyone laid down their weapons voluntarily. Her insight crystallized what I had come to understand over the years, that the evidence Michael Reeves gathered had been necessary but insufficient for the transformation that followed. The documentation had prevented irreversible damage to my relationship with Emma and Liam, but the functional family system we eventually created had required ongoing commitment from everyone involved to choose cooperation over conflict, children's needs over adult pride, and possibilities over limitations. As Liam departed for Cornell the following morning, surrounded by his entire supportive network of parents and siblings from multiple relationships, I reflected on the extraordinary journey from that preliminary custody hearing where Rebecca had called me an unfit father. The evidence that had once seemed merely instrumental in securing my parental rights had ultimately provided my children with an invaluable education in conflict resolution, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. When people facing their own custody challenges ask what made the difference in our unusual journey, I explained that the evidence was merely the catalyst for truth that eventually allowed healing. The real transformation came through the difficult ongoing work of setting aside vindication in favor of cooperation, work that benefited everyone involved, especially Emma and Liam, who now navigated adulthood with the security of knowing their entire family system remained intact across geographical distance and relationship configurations. The private investigator's evidence didn't just change the legal outcome of our custody battle. It ultimately transformed our understanding of what family could be, not limited by conventional definitions or legal documents, but expanded through intention, commitment, and the choice to prioritize children's well-being above all else. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.